Hey night grade, welcome back to week 2 of our Google Classroom. Thank you for being engaged and submitting your assignments for last week. We hope that the feedback you received from Ginny, Anne, and myself was helpful and that you feel confident with summarizing the main idea of the text now. If you're still confused about anything, please reach out with your questions. Last week, we talked about summarizing the main idea of a text. This week, we're going to work on a literary analysis skill called sequencing events in a text. Like the topic implies, the purpose of today's video is to ensure students are able to place events in a text into the correct sequence or order of events. It is an essential skill for understanding plot and the story as a whole, which is important in fulfilling some of the outlined English and history competencies. If you had Ginny as a teacher, this is a skill that you're familiar with, and it is often your least favorite section of the test, chronological order. Being so, without further ado, let's get into it. Do now. Listen carefully to the following passage, then go to the Google Classroom page where you'll see an assignment titled Do Now Week 2 Sequencing Teacher Anne's Story. Place the events in the correct chronological order. Teacher Anne's story. It had been a long, tiring shift of work for Teacher Anne. She had taught all day, and now she had a stack of essays waiting to be graded on her desk. A glance at the clock made her groan as she saw that the hands indicated it was already 8 p.m. Well, she thought, I better get started. These exams are not going to grade themselves. As red ink began to fill the pages and essay grades were meticulously recorded in Gridlink, Anne's mind began to wander. All of a sudden, she was back in Illinois, sitting in the backyard of her family's house for a family dinner. It was a summer evening, and hamburgers were being cooked on the grill. The sounds of laughter and the smell of the cooking meat filled the air. Anne felt light and happy. Suddenly, the zap of the office bug killer snapped Anne back to reality. With a sigh, she turned her attention back to the essays, but her mood was significantly improved after reliving that fond memory of a beautiful summer night spent with family. Now that you've completed the do now, let's walk through sequencing. Sequencing refers to the identification of the components of a story, the beginning, the middle, and the end, and also to the ability to retell the events within a given text in the order in which they occurred. The ability to sequence events in a text is a key comprehension strategy, especially for narrative text. Now, sequencing in English is different from sequencing as we know it in biology. That involves DNA and human genome. So, hopefully, for those of us that have plans to work in the health sector, we will most definitely come across that. Ordering events. Let's go back to the passage that we read for the do now. You had to place the following events in the correct order. Anne began grading essays. The office bug killer zapped. Anne had dinner with her family. Anne looked at the clock and Anne taught classes. Looking at the passage, your first instinct might be to place Anne teaching classes as the first event. After all, it is the first event that shows up in the reading. However, you have forgotten a very important literary device that you learned in 8th grade and practiced in 9th grade. Anyone know what literary device I'm talking about? I'm hoping that you all said flashback, or else your English teachers are going to be very disappointed in you. But yes, we have a flashback in this passage. When Anne thinks back on the dinner she had with her family during the summer, that breaks the chronological order of the passage. Although it comes later in the passage, Anne had dinner with her family is actually the first event in our sequencing. The rest of the sequencing follows the order that the events appear in the passage. Anne taught her classes. Anne looked at the clock. Anne began grading essays, and finally, the office bug killer zapped. As one more example of how flashback can be used in a story, let's watch the following clip from the movie Ratatouille. For those of you who have not seen the movie, Ratatouille is the story of a man and a rat. Yes, you heard me correctly, a man and a rat, who opens a restaurant together. This scene features a food critic who is coming to review their restaurant. Watch the clip and look closely at how the movie uses flashback to share new information with the viewers.
Ratatouille? They must be joking. No.
When the food critic tastes the dish called ratatouille, the food after which the film is named, he immediately flashes back to his childhood. We see him as a sad child. To cheer him up, his mother prepared ratatouille for him. Why was this important enough information for the film to include as a flashback? Because the dish reminds him of his childhood. The food critic is much more likely to give the restaurant a positive review because it took him back to a good childhood memory and reminded him of his mother. Thus, we can see how flashback is used in stories to give us critical information about the past that influenced the characters, their actions, and the general plot of the story in the present. How are we feeling about sequencing after the example? Simple, right? Yeah, I know. If you have any questions, please send us a message via Google Classroom. You can continue to practice sequencing with any reading that you do. Pay attention to the order in which things occur and how that order builds the plot. Make timelines of the books and readings that you do and force yourself to pay attention to the small details. This will improve your overall abilities in literary analysis. Homework. You are to read chapter 2 of the book The Outsiders. Please submit this assignment by May the 14th. We will give you feedback on all of your submissions, which will help you as you continue to study and practice your competences. Keep up the good work, Night Grade. We're extremely proud of the tenacity you display. Now, go forth and sequence.